The sound of the doorbell chimed softly as a middle-aged man stepped into a local coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Jack Rivers, at the age of 60, had grown accustomed to his own company, seeking solace in the quiet moments where he could reflect without the distraction of others. His steps were deliberate as he walked to his usual corner table by the window, the same spot he'd sat in for the last 5 years. The bell above the door had rung every time he'd entered, but he never looked to see who it was. It was his space, his time, a sacred ritual of sorts. The street outside was slick with rain, and the bustle of the city seemed far away, muted by the fogged-up glass. He sat down, ordered his usual, and took a long, silent sip of his coffee. He never had to place an order any more. The waitress, Sarah, knew exactly what he wanted. She smiled at him, a kind gesture, but never lingered too long. Jack liked it that way. He wasn't one for unnecessary conversation. The cup of black coffee, no sugar, was as familiar as the routine that he had set up in this very corner. It was all the comfort he needed. As he sipped, Jack absent-mindedly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph. His fingers brushed the worn edges of the photo as he looked at the image of a young woman, her bright smile a stark contrast to the weight Jack had been carrying for years. Her name was Lily. It had been 6 years since Jack had last seen her. 6 years since the argument that had torn their relationship apart. He traced the contours of her face with his thumb, wishing for the years that had been lost to slip away. His daughter, his only child, had left after the fight, packing her things in a rush, leaving Jack with nothing but empty silence in her absence. 5 years of no contact. Jack sighed, his chest tightening. He took another sip of coffee, trying to stave off the creeping guilt, the memories of harsh words spoken in anger. In the midst of the bustling coffee shop, the noise of families and young couples, Jack was lost in the photograph of Lily, stuck in a past he couldn't change. But then, something unusual caught his attention. A small figure, a little girl, stood at the counter by herself. She had dark hair in messy braids, and her clothes were simple but neat, though her shoes looked worn. Her hands were cupped around her stomach, which growled loudly in the still air. She was hungry. "Excuse me," her voice piped up, clear and hesitant as she asked the barista for a slice of cake. The barista, an older man in a green apron, leaned forward to ask a question, his face softening as he took in the sight of the child. "Where's your mom, sweetie?" he asked, his voice low and concerned. The little girl rocked on her heels, looking down at the cake display. "She's working," she muttered. "Can I take it to go? I'm really hungry." The barista hesitated, looking around the shop. "Do you have any money?" he asked, though the words felt more like an excuse than a question. The little girl shook her head, her small face filled with embarrassment. "I don't. But I can pay later, I promise." Jack watched the exchange from his table. There was something about the girl that struck him, something familiar in her eyes. She wasn't more than 5 or 6 years old, but she carried herself with an odd mixture of shyness and quiet dignity. It was a quality Jack recognized, a reflection of someone he had known long ago. The barista, unsure and uncomfortable, finally shook his head. "I can't give you the cake without payment, kid." The girl's face fell, but she didn't cry or protest. She simply nodded and turned away, her shoulders slumping slightly. She wasn't angry. She was just disappointed. Jack stood up and walked to the counter. He looked at the girl for a moment before turning to the barista. "I'll pay for her cake," he said, placing a few bills on the counter. "And a glass of milk, please." The little girl looked up at him, startled. Her wide eyes met his, and for a moment Jack saw something in them, a mixture of innocence and trust, something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. Jack smiled, though it was a fleeting thing. "Would you like to sit with me?" he asked. "It's warmer by the window." She hesitated, glancing between him and the cake being plated for her, then nodded, her eyes still wide with curiosity. She followed him back to his table and climbed onto the chair opposite him, her legs dangling above the floor. As Jack settled into his chair, his eyes wandered to the photograph on the table. He hadn't even realized he'd left it out. The girl, now content with her cake and milk, shifted in her seat and suddenly stopped, her gaze fixing on the photo. "Why do you have my mom's picture?" she asked, her voice small but sharp, the question cutting through the quiet of the moment. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He blinked, his gaze flickering from the girl's face to the photo in his hands. It was the same picture, the same smile, the same eyes, the same tilt of the head. He hadn't noticed before, but now it was so obvious. The girl's resemblance to Lily was unmistakable. The same round face, the same deep eyes, the same faint freckles across her nose. Jack felt a chill run through him. "What's your mother's name?" he asked, his voice sounding almost hoarse, as if the words were stuck in his throat. "Her name's Lily," the girl answered without hesitation. "Lily Rivers." Jack's world seemed to stop for a moment. The noise of the coffee shop around him faded away. He stared at the girl, his granddaughter. His mind raced, but his mouth felt dry. The child he had never met. The child Lily had left behind when she walked away. His granddaughter, now sitting across from him, eating a slice of cake in the same coffee shop where he had once sat alone for so long. "Your name?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. "Emma," the little girl replied, her eyes still studying him carefully. "Emma," Jack whispered. The name seemed to settle in his chest, heavy and full of emotion. "I'm Jack. Jack Rivers. I'm your grandfather." The realization hit him harder than he expected. His mind struggled to comprehend it, but the connection was undeniable. She was his blood, his family. Emma seemed to think for a moment, her little face scrunched up in concentration. "Did you know my mom?" she asked, her voice curious but cautious. Jack swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I did," he said, his voice quiet. "I knew your mom. A long time ago. We were very close." "Are you her friend?" Emma asked, tilting her head. Jack paused. He hadn't thought of it that way. "We were more than friends," he said after a beat. "But we had a falling out. A long time ago." Emma nodded as though she understood, though Jack wasn't sure how much of it truly made sense to her. She took another bite of her cake and asked, "Can I sit with you while I finish my cake?" Jack smiled softly, gesturing to the empty chair. "Of course." Emma slid off the chair and hopped into the seat beside him, her small legs swinging above the ground. She was quiet for a moment, sipping her milk and eating her cake. But then she looked at Jack again, her expression serious. "Do you know where my mom is now?" she asked. Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He had so many questions he wanted to ask her, so much he wanted to know. But for now, he could only nod. "I'm not sure," he said, "but I'm going to try and find her." Emma blinked up at him. "Can you tell her I said thank you for giving me chocolate cake?" Jack smiled. "I will." He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out the photograph of Lily again. He ran his thumb over the worn edges and thought about the years he'd lost. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to fix things. "Do you think I could see her again?" Emma asked quietly, her voice full of hope. Jack looked at her, his heart aching. "I hope so, Emma. I really do." And for the first time in years, Jack felt a spark of hope flicker inside him. It was a long road ahead, but maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. The next morning, Jack woke up earlier than usual, his mind racing with thoughts of Emma and the brief conversation they had shared the day before. It wasn't just the little girl's innocent curiosity that kept him awake. It was the unspoken connection between them. She was his granddaughter, the daughter of Lily, the child Jack had lost contact with 5 long years ago. Sitting at the kitchen table, Jack stared at the photograph of Lily. He ran his thumb along the edges, worn and faded from years of travel, in his coat pocket. He hadn't expected this encounter, this chance meeting that had stirred old wounds and ignited a small flame of hope within him. After all this time, after so many regrets, was this his chance to make things right? Jack hadn't spoken to Lily since the day she stormed out of his house, her bags packed, leaving nothing but silence in her wake. They hadn't exchanged a single word since. No letters, no calls. Just a void that had festered into years of isolation. Yet now, somehow, there was a tiny spark of something, a possibility that perhaps he could find her again, rebuild what was broken. As he sat there, lost in thought, Jack realized that he couldn't just sit and wait. He had to take action. He couldn't let Emma's question, "Can you tell her I said thank you for giving me chocolate cake?" linger in the air unanswered. No, Jack thought. I have to try. This isn't just about me. This is about Lily, too. And Emma. His granddaughter, a child he had just met, but already, she felt like the missing piece he didn't know he was searching for. Jack stood up, grabbing his coat and heading for the door. The time for waiting was over. He was going to find Lily. Jack's first stop was the old neighborhood, the place he and Lily used to call home. He drove through the familiar streets, each turn bringing back memories of better days. There was the park where he used to take Lily to play, the corner store where they bought ice cream on hot summer days, and the coffee shop where they would sit together and talk about their hopes and dreams. It all felt so far away now, so distant. Jack wondered if Lily even remembered those days, if she still thought of him the way he thought of her. Would she even want to see him after everything that had happened? He shook his head, pushing the doubt away. He had to try. For Emma. For Lily. He drove past their old house, now occupied by strangers. The yard looked the same, but the house, the place where they had shared so many years together, now felt like a distant memory. He didn't stop. He couldn't. It wasn't the right place, not yet. Next, Jack made a few calls to some of Lily's old friends, people he hadn't spoken to in years. He didn't expect much, but he knew he had to start somewhere. He spoke to one of her old college friends, a woman named Claire, who had been a part of their lives for a brief time before everything fell apart. She was the one who had heard from Lily most recently and had some idea of where she might be. "She works at a small café on the north side of town now," Claire told him, her voice hesitant, unsure of what to make of Jack's sudden reappearance after all these years. "I'm not sure if she wants to be found, but she's still in the area. Maybe you could try there." The information wasn't much, but it was enough to give Jack a place to go. He thanked Claire and hung up, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread swirling in his chest. He didn't know what he would find when he reached the café, but he knew he couldn't give up now. The following day, Jack found himself outside a small café on the north side of town. It was nothing like the bustling coffee shops downtown. This one was tucked away on a quieter street, its faded sign barely visible above the window. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods drifted out when he opened the door. Jack stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. It was small and cozy, with mismatched furniture and soft lighting. There were a few customers scattered around, sipping coffee and chatting in low voices. The place had a quiet, welcoming atmosphere, the kind of place where people came to relax and forget about the world outside. Jack walked up to the counter, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what he would say when he saw Lily. He had rehearsed so many different scenarios in his mind, but none of them seemed right now that he was actually standing here. The weight of the years, the guilt, the regrets, it all came rushing back in an overwhelming wave. "Can I help you?" The young barista at the counter smiled at Jack, pulling him out of his thoughts. She had dark hair, tied up in a loose bun, and a friendly face. "I'm looking for someone," Jack said, his voice sounding strained even to his own ears. "Lily Rivers. Is she here?" The barista looked up at the name, then paused. "She's in the back," she said, her expression a little uncertain. "But, are you sure you want to see her? She's been through a lot." Jack nodded, though he wasn't sure if he was ready for what he might find. "I need to talk to her. Please." The barista hesitated for a moment, then motioned for Jack to follow her. She led him through a small kitchen area and into a narrow hallway at the back of the café. At the end of the hallway, she knocked on a door before opening it slightly. "Lily, someone's here to see you," she said softly. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he heard a voice from inside. It was Lily's voice, though it had changed over the years. It was still familiar, but there was a weariness to it now that Jack hadn't heard before. "I'll be out in a minute," Lily called, her voice muffled by the door. The barista gave Jack a sympathetic look before stepping back, leaving him alone in the hallway. Jack stood there for what felt like an eternity, his thoughts swirling. He could hear Lily moving around inside, but she didn't come out immediately. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the door opened. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he saw her standing there. Lily. She looked different, older, but still the same in so many ways. Her hair was longer now, and there were lines around her eyes, lines of a life lived in struggle, in solitude. But there was no mistaking it. This was Lily. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she were trying to figure out if he was really there. "Jack?" she asked, her voice a mix of surprise and caution. Jack felt a wave of emotion rush through him. He had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was real, it was more overwhelming than he had ever anticipated. "I've been looking for you," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to talk to you. Please." Lily didn't answer immediately. She just stared at him, her face unreadable. Finally, she stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in," she said quietly. Jack followed her inside, his heart pounding in his chest. The room was small, a modest living space. There were a few pieces of furniture, a small kitchenette, and pictures on the walls, but it felt empty in a way Jack couldn't quite explain. It wasn't the home he had once envisioned for his daughter. It was a place built by necessity, not choice. Lily motioned for Jack to sit, and he did, though it felt awkward. They both sat there for a moment, neither of them saying anything. "I don't know why you're here, Jack," Lily finally said, her voice calm but tinged with an edge of something Jack couldn't quite place. "You haven't spoken to me in 5 years. Why now?" Jack swallowed hard. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Lily. A lot of things I should have done differently. I can't take back the past, but I want to fix it. I want to fix what I broke with you." Lily looked at him, her eyes hardening. "You broke it when you kicked me out, Jack. You broke it when you turned your back on me, when you didn't try to understand. And now you think you can just show up and fix everything with a few words. I was wrong, Jack said, his voice barely a whisper. I was so damn wrong. I didn't understand then, but I do now. And I want to make things right. For both of us. For Emma, too. Lily's face softened slightly at the mention of Emma. Emma, she repeated. She's my daughter. And I'm doing everything I can to raise her the best I can. I'm not asking for your help, Jack. I'm not asking for anything from you. But I'm not going to let you hurt her the way you hurt me. Jack nodded slowly. I would never hurt her, Lily. I just want to be part of her life. I want to make up for the lost time. Lily stared at him for a long moment before finally speaking. We'll see, she said quietly. We'll see if you can actually change. Jack left the small café, his heart still racing after the brief but emotionally charged meeting with Lily. There had been no immediate forgiveness, no rushing into each other's arms. But there was something there, a sliver of hope. He hadn't expected it to be easy, and he didn't expect it to happen overnight. But Lily had agreed to meet again, to talk. That was a start. That was more than he had gotten in 5 long years. The days that followed were filled with an uncertainty Jack had never experienced before. Every step forward felt like walking on fragile ground, and yet there was a quiet determination inside him. For the first time in years, Jack believed that he might be able to fix what he had broken. Jack had spent so many years buried in his own pride, his own stubbornness. The walls he had built around himself were high and thick, and it had taken years for him to realize they weren't protecting him at all. They were isolating him, pushing away the very people he loved. The realization hit him hard when he met Emma. She was the reminder, the catalyst that finally broke through his defenses. After the meeting at the café, Jack found himself returning to the same place each day. He would sit by the window in his small apartment, the same spot where he used to dwell on his regrets, and he would think about Lily and Emma. What would it take to rebuild the years that had been lost? What could he say that would make Lily see that he had changed? He thought about his daughter every day, but now, with Emma in the picture, his mind was split. There was so much more at stake now. This wasn't just about him and Lily anymore. It was about a family, a future, and a child who needed to know her grandfather. Jack knew he had to do things differently this time. He couldn't force Lily into a relationship she wasn't ready for. He couldn't push her to forgive him, but he could show her that he was sincere. He could prove that he was ready to be part of their lives, that he wasn't the same man who had let them down all those years ago. One afternoon, Jack decided to take a step forward. He was going to visit the diner where Lily worked. He didn't know what he would say when he saw her again, but he couldn't wait any longer. Emma had given him the push he needed, and now he had to follow through. The diner was small and cozy, tucked away on a quiet street, much like the café where Jack had first met Emma. It was a place where the local regulars gathered for coffee and home-cooked meals, a place that felt like it had stood the test of time. Jack had always known that Lily worked here, but he had never visited. He had never made the effort. As Jack stepped through the door, the familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon hit him. It was a comforting, nostalgic scent, but it only served to remind him of how much time had passed, and how much he had missed. The diner's interior was just as cozy as he remembered, with its checkered floors and vintage jukebox in the corner. A waitress in a white apron greeted him with a warm smile. Jack could see the familiar faces of the regulars, but Lily was nowhere in sight. "Excuse me," Jack said to the waitress, his voice a little unsteady. "I'm looking for Lily Rivers." The waitress smiled politely, but Jack could tell she was unsure of who he was. "Lily?" "Oh, she's working the late shift today, but she should be back soon. You can wait for her if you like." Jack nodded, though he felt his anxiety rising. He hadn't planned on waiting, but now that he was here, he couldn't bring himself to leave. He found an empty booth by the window and sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he folded them in his lap. Time seemed to drag on as Jack waited, each minute stretching into the next. He thought about all the years that had passed, the years he had spent regretting his decisions and wishing for a chance to make things right. How could he possibly explain all of this to Lily? How could he make her see that he was truly sorry? And then, as if the universe had decided it was time, the door to the back room swung open, and there she was. Lily. She looked the same, but different, more worn, more tired, but still with that same strength in her eyes. She didn't notice Jack at first. She was busy putting on her apron and gathering her things from the kitchen. When she finally looked up, their eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither of them moved. It was as if the world had stopped, leaving just the two of them standing there, separated by years of silence. Lily hesitated, then walked toward him, her expression unreadable. "Jack," she said, her voice calm but guarded. "What are you doing here?" Jack stood up slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "I came to see you," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "I need to talk to you, Lily. I've been looking for you." Lily didn't respond right away. She just stood there, staring at him, as if she was trying to figure out if he was real or if this was some sort of dream. "I've made so many mistakes," Jack continued, his voice cracking. "And I'm sorry. I've been sorry for years. I just didn't know how to fix it. But I'm here now. I want to make things right. I want to be part of your life again. And I want to be part of Emma's life too." Lily's eyes softened for just a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "It's not that simple, Jack," she said, her voice steady but cold. "You can't just show up after all this time and expect everything to be okay. I'm not the same person I was before. And neither are you." "I know," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll prove it to you, Lily. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. But I want a chance. A chance to fix what I broke." Lily studied him for a long moment, and Jack felt as though she was looking right into his soul, trying to see if his words were genuine. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said quietly, "and I'm not sure I ever will be. But I'll give you a chance. For Emma. She deserves to know who you are. But don't expect anything more than that." Jack's heart soared with the smallest glimmer of hope. He didn't expect immediate forgiveness. He didn't expect everything to be fixed in a day. But this was something. This was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jack continued to visit Lily at the diner. Each visit was an awkward dance of tentative words, of Jack trying to prove himself and Lily cautiously allowing him into her world, but only just. Emma, however, seemed to take a liking to Jack quickly. She enjoyed spending time with him, and for that Jack was grateful. But Lily, though she allowed him to be part of their lives, remained distant and cautious. Jack didn't mind. He understood. He knew that rebuilding trust would take time, that his past mistakes couldn't be undone overnight. But he was willing to wait. For the first time in years, he had hope that he could reconnect with his daughter, that he could be part of Emma's life, and that, one day, maybe Lily would forgive him. And so, Jack took it one day at a time. He made small efforts to show Lily that he had changed. He offered to help her with errands, to take Emma to the park, to show them that he was committed to being a better man, a better father, a better grandfather. The road ahead was long, but Jack knew he had taken the first step. He had found Lily. Now, he just had to prove that he was worthy of her trust. And for the first time in a long time, Jack believed that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. The weeks after Jack's initial conversation with Lily were filled with small, cautious steps forward. Jack had never imagined that reconciling with his daughter would be easy, but he also hadn't fully understood just how much time it would take to heal the wounds of the past. Every interaction felt like navigating a delicate balance. Jack was doing his best to show Lily that he had changed, but Lily remained guarded, hesitant to let him in too fully. Jack kept coming to the diner regularly, never pushing Lily for more than she was willing to give. He spent time with Emma whenever he could, taking her to the park, getting ice cream, playing games, just being present. He knew that building a relationship with his granddaughter would help Lily see that he was serious about being part of their lives. Still, there was an underlying tension in the air whenever he and Lily spoke. She never invited him into her home. They never had long conversations about the past or about the future. But Jack understood that it would take time, that words alone weren't enough to heal the hurt between them. The first breakthrough came one rainy afternoon, about a month after their initial meeting. Jack had just finished his shift at the local architecture firm and decided to stop by the diner on his way home. As he walked in, he noticed Lily wasn't at the counter, which was unusual. The waitress, a young woman who had grown accustomed to Jack's visits, greeted him with a concerned look. "Jack, you should probably talk to Lily. She's been really down today." "I think it's something with Emma," she said softly. Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always hated seeing Lily upset, and knowing that it might be related to Emma only made it worse. Without another word, Jack made his way to the back of the diner, where Lily was standing near the kitchen. She was drying a dish, her back turned to him, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly as she worked. "Lily." Jack's voice was tentative, unsure of how to approach her after the awkward silence that had hung between them for weeks. She turned slowly, her expression weary. "I didn't know what to do, Jack," Lily said, her voice strained. "Emma. She's been asking about her father, and I don't know how to explain it to her. I don't want her to feel abandoned, but I don't know how to protect her from what happened between us." Jack's heart tightened as he saw the weight of the situation fall heavily on Lily's shoulders. She was doing everything she could to protect Emma from the pain of their past, but Jack could see how exhausted she was, how lost. For a moment, Jack didn't speak. He simply watched her, his mind racing for the right words. "I understand," Jack said quietly. "But Lily, you don't have to do this alone. You never did. I was wrong to make you feel like you had to carry it all by yourself. I can be there for both of you. I can help. And I want to." Lily's eyes softened, but she shook her head. "It's not that simple, Jack. It's not just about you being there for us. You left, and you hurt me. I can't just forget that." Jack nodded slowly, his heart heavy with the truth. "I don't expect you to forget. I don't even expect you to forgive me right away. But I want to try. For Emma, for you. I can't change the past, but I can be here now. I can do better. I just need you to let me." Lily stood still for a long moment, her gaze fixed on Jack as though she was measuring him, weighing his words. Jack didn't look away. He knew that this wasn't about promises he could make. It was about showing Lily that he was committed to being there for her, that he was ready to be part of their lives in a way he hadn't been before. Finally, Lily sighed, a long, weary exhale. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Jack. But maybe it's time to start somewhere. For Emma." She deserves to know her grandfather. She deserves to have you in her life. Jack felt a surge of relief at her words, though he knew this was just the beginning. They weren't anywhere near close to fully mending their relationship, but this was something. It was a start. And for the first time in years, Jack felt a glimmer of hope that he might just be able to earn back Lily's trust. In the weeks that followed, Jack continued to prove his dedication. He began spending more time with Emma, getting to know her better. They built small routines, like reading books before bed, having pancake breakfasts together on Sundays, and taking trips to the zoo. Emma seemed to enjoy Jack's company, and he relished every moment with her. For Lily, things remained more complicated. She had agreed to allow Jack into their lives, but it was clear that she was still holding back, still unsure. Jack didn't push. He didn't want to rush her, and he knew that any attempt to force things would only push her away. They started talking more, though, not about the past at first, but about simple things: Emma's school, the diner where Lily worked, and the small things that made up their lives now. Jack didn't expect everything to change immediately, but he was committed to showing Lily and Emma that he was truly invested in being part of their future. One Saturday afternoon, after spending the morning with Emma, Jack decided to visit the diner again. This time, he wasn't just stopping by for a coffee or to chat with Lily. He had something important to say, something that had been on his mind for a while. As he walked into the diner, he saw Lily behind the counter. She was busy serving a customer, but when she looked up and saw Jack, she gave him a small, tentative smile. Jack returned the smile and made his way over to her. "I've been thinking," Jack began, his voice calm but firm. "I want to help you with more than just the little things. I want to be a real part of this family, Lily. I'm not asking for everything, but I want to be there for you and Emma in ways that matter." Lily paused, looking at Jack. Her eyes softened for a moment, and Jack could see the flicker of something. Maybe hope, maybe doubt. "I don't know if I can let you back in fully," she said softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But I'll try. For Emma. For you. I can't promise it will be easy, but I'll try." Jack nodded, grateful for the chance. "That's all I need, Lily. A chance. To show you that I'm not the same person I was before." As the weeks turned into months, Jack's efforts didn't go unnoticed. Lily began to open up more, sharing small parts of her life with him. She still struggled with trusting him fully, but the walls between them began to soften. They spent more time together, having dinner as a family, celebrating small victories like Emma's progress in school and the improvement in her artwork. Jack couldn't erase the past, but he could create new memories with Emma and Lily. They started taking family trips to the beach, where they played in the sand, built sandcastles, and laughed together. For Jack, each moment felt like a small victory, a chance to rebuild the connection that had been lost. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of Lily's apartment, watching the sunset, Emma turned to Jack and asked, "Grandpa, will you always be here now?" Jack's heart swelled as he looked at her, the innocence of her question piercing him. "I'll always be here, Emma. I'll never leave again," he said, his voice steady with conviction. Lily, sitting beside them, didn't say anything, but Jack saw the way she looked at him, the small shift in her expression that told him she was beginning to believe it too. And as the days went by, Jack realized that this was the life he had been waiting for, the life he had been too blind to see before. The chance to make things right. To be the father and grandfather he had never been. And in that moment, as they sat together, the future felt full of possibilities. The weeks turned into months, and Jack continued to show up, not just in physical presence, but emotionally, mentally, and with every action he took. He had learned, painfully, that redemption wasn't something handed out like a trophy for effort. It wasn't something that could be earned through words alone. Jack had started to realize that forgiveness, when it came, would be a slow, steady process, and he had to be patient. He had to prove through his actions, and sometimes in silence, that he was no longer the man who had let them both down. Lily's trust in him was like fragile glass. Every small crack had to be carefully smoothed over, each fracture repaired with time and patience. But still, Jack felt the progress, the glimmers of hope that pierced through the layers of uncertainty that surrounded them. She wasn't ready to embrace him completely yet, but she had stopped shutting him out. That, for Jack, was a victory in itself. The visits to the diner continued, but now there was more than just small talk. Jack no longer just came to watch Emma play or sit by himself in a corner booth. He and Lily shared more casual conversations after the diner closed. They talked about their past, the things that had hurt them, and the things that they wished they had done differently. But Jack understood, and perhaps for the first time, he felt that Lily understood too. There were no easy answers. They could only move forward from here. For Emma, the shifts were subtler. She had come to trust Jack, but that trust wasn't instant either. It had to be earned, even though her small gestures of affection, a smile, a hug, a laugh at one of Jack's corny jokes, told him everything he needed to know. Still, Emma was a child, and her world was filled with confusion. Jack knew that Emma needed stability, something that would help her feel secure. Lily did her best, but Jack also felt the weight of responsibility that came with being a grandfather, a role he was determined to fulfill, no matter how late he had arrived. One evening, after dinner, Jack and Emma found themselves sitting together on the couch, flipping through an old photo album Lily had reluctantly agreed to share. The photos were of Emma when she was a baby, growing up through the years, full of innocence and joy. Jack watched Emma as she pointed at the pictures, telling stories about the places they had visited or the fun they'd had. He felt a warmth in his chest, a warmth that had been missing for so long. "Grandpa," Emma asked, her small finger pointing to an image of her and Lily at the beach, "do you think we can go to the beach again? Mom doesn't like going much, but I think it would be fun." Jack smiled. "I think that sounds like a great idea, Emma. I think we should plan a day, just the three of us. How about next weekend?" Emma's face lit up. "Really? That would be awesome." Jack felt a little pang of guilt as he saw the joy in her eyes. He knew he had missed out on so much of Emma's early childhood. There were so many moments he couldn't get back. But he was determined to make the most of the time they had left. He would be the grandfather Emma deserved, the one who showed up, the one who cared, the one who was present. Though Jack's relationship with Emma was beginning to flourish, things with Lily remained delicate. Jack could feel the hesitation in her every word, the way she held herself back when it came to letting him fully back into her life. She would never deny him the chance to be around Emma, but when it came to her own heart, she was still conflicted. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, Lily and Jack sat on the porch of her apartment, sipping tea. The air was cool, the kind of quiet night where it felt like the world was holding its breath. "I know you're trying, Jack," Lily said softly, her voice not accusatory but still carrying the weight of years of hurt. "But it's hard. It's not easy to forgive you, to trust that you're really different." Jack's heart tightened at her words. He had known this moment would come. The truth was, he didn't expect it to be easy. And now, as he looked at her, the woman who had once been his daughter, the woman he had hurt so badly, he realized that all the things he wanted to say, all the apologies he wished he could take back, were not enough. He had already said, "I'm sorry," 1,000 times, but he would say it 1,000 more if it meant that it would make a difference. "I know, Lily," he said softly, his voice full of regret. "I don't expect it to be easy. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance. A real chance. For Emma, for us. Lily didn't look at him immediately. Instead, she stared out at the street, her thoughts distant. Finally, she sighed. I want that too, she said quietly. I want things to be different. But I don't know how to make that happen. I've spent so long trying to do it on my own. I don't know how to let someone in again. Jack placed his hand gently over hers, his touch tentative but sincere. I'll be here, no matter how long it takes. I'm not going anywhere. I know it's going to be hard, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. And I'm not giving up. Lily turned her hand to grip his gently, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of exhaustion and something softer, a quiet willingness. I'm not ready to move in with you, Jack, she said softly. But I'll think about it. I'll think about us. And I'll think about Emma. Jack nodded, understanding. It wasn't about rushing into anything. It was about being patient and letting things unfold at their own pace. The weekend arrived, and with it, Jack's chance to make good on his promise to Emma. He and Lily had spent the week planning the trip to the beach, and despite Lily's reservations, she agreed to come along. Jack had been nervous. He didn't know if Lily was doing this for Emma's sake, or if she was actually beginning to open up to the idea of reconnecting with him. Either way, he would take it. When they arrived at the beach, the sun was shining brightly, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air. Emma ran ahead, her laughter carrying in the breeze. Jack and Lily watched her, standing side by side but not touching, the distance between them still palpable. I haven't been here in years, Lily said, her voice soft as she gazed out at the ocean. It's nice to see Emma enjoying it. Jack smiled, feeling a small sense of peace settle over him. I'm glad we're here. It's not too late, you know. We still have time. Lily looked at him, her expression softening. For the first time in a long while, Jack saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Hope. Maybe. Or maybe just a small crack in the wall she had built around herself. Yeah, Lily said quietly. We do. As summer began to fade into fall, Jack's visits to the diner had become a regular part of his routine. He continued to spend time with Emma, taking her to the park, to the zoo, and to the small ice cream stand by the lake they both had grown so fond of. Lily, while still distant, had started to warm up to the idea of a more regular interaction. The awkward silences that had once filled the spaces between them were starting to fade, replaced by more natural conversations. There were still things left unsaid, but for the first time in a long while, Jack felt that they were moving in the right direction. One particular Saturday morning, Jack picked up Emma as usual. She was waiting for him in the small living room, bouncing on the couch with excitement, her yellow dress fluttering with each jump. "Grandpa, guess what? I learned how to ride my bike without training wheels." Emma beamed, her eyes wide with pride. "That's amazing, Emma." Jack smiled warmly as he knelt down to her level. He had missed out on so many of these moments when she was younger. Her excitement was infectious, and Jack couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude for being a part of her life again. "Can we go to the park today? I want to show you," she said, her voice full of hope. "Of course, sweetheart," Jack replied, ruffling her hair. "Let's go." As they walked out of the apartment and into the crisp fall morning, Jack couldn't help but notice how Emma had grown. She was no longer the little girl he had first met. She was becoming her own person, with ideas, dreams, and an independent spirit. It made Jack's heart swell with both pride and sorrow. He had missed so much of her life, and though he couldn't change the past, he was determined to be present now. While Jack and Emma spent their day together at the park, Lily was at work. She had become more accustomed to the idea of Jack being part of their lives, but it wasn't easy. She couldn't forget how much he had hurt her, how many years she had spent alone, raising Emma, without the support she had needed. She had been holding on to her anger for so long, but with every passing week, Lily found herself questioning if it was time to let it go. Her walls were still high, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to tear them down completely. There were days when she saw glimpses of the man Jack had once been, and that scared her. It scared her because she knew that opening herself up to him again meant risking everything. What if he left again? What if, in trying to rebuild, they just ended up hurt all over again? But there was something else too. She saw how happy Emma was when Jack was around. She could see that Jack was making an effort, trying to be a better man, not just for her but for their daughter. And while she wasn't ready to fully forgive him, Lily couldn't ignore the small moments, the laughter Emma shared with Jack, the warmth that had started to fill their home again. Lily couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Maybe they could start over, rebuild something better. It was late afternoon when Jack returned from the park, his heart still light from the joy of watching Emma ride her bike. He was looking forward to seeing Lily again, hoping that they could have one of their quiet conversations, where words were no longer guarded and silences weren't so heavy. But when he entered the diner that evening, he noticed something unusual. Lily wasn't behind the counter. In fact, the diner was nearly empty, with just a few customers scattered about. The waitress, who had become accustomed to Jack's regular visits, caught his eye. "Lily's not here," she said apologetically. "She left early today. Something came up." Jack's stomach sank. He had gotten used to seeing Lily, even in her quiet moments, at the diner. He wasn't sure what it meant that she had left early. He wondered if something had happened, if she had been thinking about everything they'd been working on and needed some space. He sat down at the counter, trying to push away the nagging feeling in his chest. Emma had been excited about their day, and Jack didn't want to spoil that. But there was something about Lily's absence that felt wrong, like a piece of the puzzle was missing. "Is everything okay?" Jack asked the waitress, his voice low, concerned. The waitress paused for a moment, then leaned in slightly. "Lily's been under a lot of stress lately," she said, her voice lowered to a whisper. "She's been struggling with a lot of things, Jack. I'm not sure what's going on, but she's not herself lately. I think she's just trying to figure it all out." Jack nodded, understanding that Lily had been carrying a heavy burden. He knew how hard it must have been for her, trying to raise Emma on her own while also dealing with the aftermath of their past. But he couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. He didn't want to lose this chance, this fragile connection they were beginning to build. That night, after the diner had closed, Jack decided to give Lily some space. He didn't want to rush her or push her when she was clearly dealing with her own struggles. But he also knew that if he wanted things to work, if he truly wanted to rebuild what they had lost, he needed to talk to her, really talk to her. Jack found Lily sitting on the porch of her apartment building when he arrived later that evening. She was staring out into the dark street, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The cool autumn breeze ruffled her hair, but she didn't seem to notice. "Lily," Jack said softly as he approached, sitting beside her without waiting for an invitation. She didn't look at him, but she didn't pull away either. "I've been thinking a lot," Jack began, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "I know I can't fix everything right away, and I don't expect you to forgive me tomorrow. But I want to try. I want to be here for you and Emma, in any way I can." Lily remained silent, her gaze fixed on the street ahead of her. Jack could see the conflict in her eyes, the way she was wrestling with her own emotions. She wanted to believe him, but the past was a heavy weight to carry, and trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. I know I've hurt you, Jack continued, his voice thick with regret. But I'm not that man anymore. I'm not the man who left you alone, who let you carry all the weight. I want to be here now. And I know it won't be easy. But I'm willing to do the work. For you, for Emma, for us. Lily turned to look at him then, her eyes tired but searching. I don't know, Jack, she whispered. I want to believe you. I really do. But you left us. And it's not easy to just forget that. It's not easy to forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, Jack said, his heart heavy. I'm asking for a chance. A real chance. I want to prove to you that I'm not going to leave again. I won't let you down. For a long moment, Lily said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'm not ready to move in with you, Jack. But I'll let you be part of Emma's life. And I'll try. I'll try to trust you again. Jack's heart soared, though he knew this was just the beginning. He wasn't asking for everything, just a chance to prove that he could be the man Lily and Emma deserved.